Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is Tales from a Balanced Team. My name is Alex Basson. This is Josh Franklin, and over here is Jim Thomson. We work at Pivotal Labs, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what Pivotal Labs is in a little bit. But what we're going to talk about today is our experience working together as a balanced team to produce a product and how that actually ended up helping us produce the product more quickly and with better user value.
So yeah, there is really no one right way to build software, but there are plenty of wrong ways to do it. So one wrong way might look like this, and perhaps you've experienced it. So the business gets together and they say, we need some software because this software is going to make us a lot of money. Okay, great. Let's put our heads down and write requirements. Let's write a lot of requirements. And let's do this for a couple months and create a stack of paper 6 inches high, that sounds good, of all these requirements that we need. Okay, we're good with that, right? This is going to solve all our problems, make us a lot of money. Here, designer, here's a stack of requirements. Make it look pretty, right? You know about color. Perfect. The designer, head down, headphones on, creates beautiful designs, beautiful mocks. They're great, right? Look amazing. Then he gives them back to the business. Business probably says, no, these aren't great. Please change it. I don't like that blue. Okay, great. You update it. The business then takes it and hands it to the developer, and the developer implements it, and everything works out perfectly, right? Not usually. So that's not a great way to build software. But we're going to talk about a better way to build software. Who here has heard of the concept of balanced team? Are you familiar with it? Yeah, so most. It was alluded to a little bit this morning in the keynotes. So a balanced team refers to a concept of people from different roles, designer, PM, developer. That for our team. For other teams, it might be a little bit different. Working together concurrently throughout the project in order to build a better product and be happier about doing it. Some of the ways we do this is through creating trust. We share experiments. We celebrate failure. We also celebrate success, of course. And we provide diverse voices in order to make a happier, more productive team. So we're going to talk about specific examples of how our balanced team worked on a project.
So as I mentioned before, we work at Pivotal Labs. How many of you are familiar with Labs? Most of you. So Labs is the consultancy wing of Pivotal, and what that means is that we work with clients who come to us who are interested in learning more about how to develop their software using Agile methodologies. And so they come to us and they're interested in mostly in learning. They come to us with a product that they want to build, and they, in conjunction with us, we work together with them to build that product, but along the way, we are working with the client developers, the client product manager, the client designers to help enable them to learn these methodologies so that after they disengage with us, they can go off and continue working this way. So throughout this entire process, we are always working together with the client to help them learn how to do Agile more effectively. So we're going to talk a little bit now. Jim's going to talk about what this meant for this project in particular.
Yep. So these ideas that Alex just talked about small multidisciplinary teams and teaching the client, we do this for all of our clients, whether it's a large enterprise or a small startup. We're going to talk in this talk about a specific project with a small nonprofit startup called Give Lively. So Give Lively is a nonprofit that is looking to change the way that people give. They envision a suite of products that will help a user organize their charitable giving. And this was the first product that they built. And so the problem was, as our world becomes more materialistic, how can we create a simple and instant way for givers to express gratitude in a meaningful way? So Give Lively and Pivotal teamed up and developed an application called Small Token that makes it easy and quick to give a donation to a nonprofit on behalf of someone you care about. And Josh is going to walk you through the basic workflow here.
Cool. So let's see if this is going to work. Awesome. All right. So we're going to walk through just the basic sort of main workflow of the application of giving somebody a gift, customizing that gift, and then sending that out to somebody that they care about. Sign in to view the video. That's awful.
Whoa.
I don't know why it did that. All right. Let's just keep going past it for right now. So the idea is that you would sign into the application, put in somebody's email address that you care about. You can give it a few different parameters as far as where the gift is going to be donated to, as far as what nonprofit would receive the gift, how much you want to give on behalf of that person, and you can show or not show the amount on the gift. And then you can move on to customize that gift. You can choose a background, an icon, a color, and then you go and pay for that gift. What happens when you go to pay for the gift is you're actually brought out of the application and into a web view to pay for the gift. After the gift is paid for, it gets sent to the recipient via a nicely designed email that aligns with the customization and the look and feel that you provided for this gift. And Alex is going to talk a little bit about the team structure.
Right. So in the spirit of a balanced team, we had all the roles working together at the same time throughout the life of the project. We had a product manager, this is Jim, together with a client product manager, David from Give Lively. We had a designer, Josh here. And then we had 4 engineers. I was one of them. We also had 3 other engineers working together to actually build and implement the user-facing features. And then the one other role that wasn't actually with us on a day-to-day basis were the stakeholders. I like to think of the stakeholders as the people who actually write the checks. They're the ones who came to us with the idea and for whom this product is being built. In this case, it was a husband and wife couple who started Give Lively as a nonprofit organization, and they were driven by this idea of reducing the friction in charitable giving. So they had this concept of an iOS app for charitable giving, and they came to us to help them to build it. So next up, Jim's going to talk about the timeline and how that drove some of the decisions that we ended up making.
Yeah, sure. We were on a pretty tight timeline for this project, revolving around our MVP launch on Giving Tuesday, right? So there's Black Friday, there's Cyber Monday. There's also Giving Tuesday, which you're encouraged to give to your favorite charities in December. So we had this deadline, but we kicked off the research phase of our project September 29th. We call our research phase a discovery and framing, or a DNF. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then we kicked off development just 2 weeks later. We call that kickoff Inception at Pivotal Labs. And we worked towards Giving Tuesday, December 1st. And then beyond that, we reached a few additional milestones that improve the customization that you can provide for the card. And we disengaged on January 22nd. And so we're going to talk about specific examples in which our balanced team was able to succeed in this project.
So let me start by talking about the research phase. As Jim mentioned earlier, we had a 2-week research phase, a 2-week discovery and framing, where we tried to figure out what exactly was the product that we needed to build. This involved our struggling with a number of different questions, such as, do we actually want to build a native iOS app, or would this have been better implemented as a mobile responsive website? What kind of features did users really want in a minimal viable product? I mean, we had all sorts of features that we had in mind, but what is the minimum set of features that we really needed to go to market with, that we needed to really release right away, and then start gathering user feedback on that product? Where were we going to get our data from? So as the user is creating a card, and I'm sorry we couldn't show the video earlier of the workflow, but as the user creates that gift, one of the things that they have to do is choose which nonprofit is going to receive the donations. We needed, of course, to source that data from someplace, and we wanted to know how that integration was going to work, where we were going to get it from, how easy that was going to be, what kind of information we were going to be able to get from that integration. So these were the kinds of questions that we wanted to address during the discovery and framing. What's interesting is that we were all a part of it. It wasn't just Jim as the product manager or just Josh as the designer, but in fact the entire team was actively engaged in the discovery process. So I was a part of doing user interviews, gathering user research, synthesizing user data so that we could pull from that information common themes, such as users really prefer a native iOS app over mobile responsive, or users really cared a great deal about nonprofit efficiency. And these were the kinds of things that we learned from doing the user research. And as an engineer engaged in that process, it really helped me to become more empathetic and understanding of the user's actual needs. You know, the organization came to us, Give Lively came to us with this concept of this app, but until we were able to actually validate this in front of actual users, we weren't really sure what it is that users actually wanted to know and what kind of needs they really had. Being a part of that whole discovery process made it much easier for us as engineers to implement features in a way that made the most sense and delivered the most user value. So the big takeaway here is in an unbalanced team and an unbalanced product development cycle, the user research part can often happen out of the context of the actual development of the product. And so the people who are engaged in doing the user research are often not the same people who are actually going to be building the product. That user research might happen months in advance. It might happen with people who have no actual engagement in the development of the product, and that does not actually engender much in the way of understanding and empathy on the part of the team responsible for building it. But in a balanced team, that engagement is much more direct and much more powerful because the people who are actually building the product are the same ones who are doing the actual user research. Josh is going to talk now about one of the other takeaways that we had from building this out.
So how many people are familiar with an MVP? Awesome. So we had a different concept here, which was a minimum approvable product. The story that came out of this was our client, PM, product owner, came to us with some research that he had done previous to coming into labs, where he found out that actually charitable donations were not allowed to be taken within a native iOS application, and that you'd actually have to take that donation through a web view that had to be separate from the native app. So he came to us, he let us know about this sort of regulation that he had found out, and we decided that instead of going down the road of trying to build something more complex than it needed to be, what we wanted to do is try to define what the minimum approvable product could be that we could send to Apple in order to understand if our workflow that we were developing would be approved by them. Before we had our full features set out, before it was fully robust, we wanted to get something out there that would allow us to find the minimum thing that we could get approved. So this played itself out in a couple of different ways. On an unbalanced team, tech decisions sometimes follow business decisions. So if the business had come to us and said, hey, we want you to be able, no matter what, to take this donation inside this native app, we feel like it's not going to be a really good experience to kick someone out, we may have walked down that path and not been able to get the product actually approved by Apple, and would have potentially had to have ripped things out of the application in order to make it work. And on a balanced team, the business and tech concerns are intertwined. They came to us with this information early on, and we were able to have those two things drive back and forth and able to figure out what is the minimum approvable product that we could get out there that would be put through the full process. Because the entire team was part of the research, we were better equipped to handle this sort of strange interaction that we potentially had to deal with, and it really helped us move through that process a lot faster. Another thing is that on an unbalanced team, knowledge sometimes is siloed. If David, our product owner, had not known who to share this information with, or that he should have shared this information with the team, again, like I said, we may have walked down a path of actually building something that would not have been able to go through the approval process. And so on a balanced team, diversity of knowledge is shared. We want to make sure that every discipline has the tools and the respect to be able to share information that they have with one another in order to bolster the success of this of the product. So Jim's going to talk a little bit about our next story.
So On a balanced team, every team member can offer insight on design, and as well as across any role. And one example of how we did this on this project is a sketching studio. So all team members, after participating in the user research and the user interviews and prioritizing the problems that we were going to solve for the user together, we sat down and actually sketched out our individual solutions for the same problem. We all came up with our solution for the main workflow of the app. We took that together and we critiqued and synthesized these ideas into a single workflow. Josh took that workflow and created higher fidelity wireframes and eventually fully baked designs based on that. And in the end, we took existing design ideas and paired it with our understanding based on the research in order to produce the best possible solution for the problem. So on an unbalanced team, designers pitch mocks over the wall, and developers implement it, right? But these designs aren't as good as they could be. Engineers and PMs, we have different mindsets. We come from different places, and we can provide valuable insight into the design process. And also, sometimes these designs are impossible to implement. If Josh is not talking to Alex, he might pitch over ideas that will take Alex an extremely long time to implement and cost us and the client money, right? And then there's also this disconnect between the time of design and the time of implementation. And we're unable to iterate meaningfully if Josh is designing in a bubble.
So we want to talk a little bit about the process during which we go over the stories and track them and come to a shared understanding. We have a weekly meeting called an iteration planning meeting, during which the entire team gathers and discusses that week's and maybe the following week's batch of user stories. The goal here is to come to a shared understanding of the upcoming stories and to have an estimation of the complexity of these stories going forward so that product team, in this case Jim, can make an informed decision about how to prioritize the stories. So as an example, I mentioned earlier that we needed to integrate with an external data source to supply us with nonprofit organizations, or the info on nonprofit organizations. We had an idea based on the user feedback that we received during our discovery and framing phase that users were very interested in picking nonprofits around certain themes. So we wanted to categorize those nonprofits. Maybe these were about animals, and these were about the environment, and these were about education, or something like that. So we thought, all right, well, what we'll do is we'll display our nonprofits in these categorized buckets. Fine. But then when we started digging into the actual data source, we learned that the integration from which we were gathering the information about nonprofits didn't include that categorization data. And so the work that was going to be necessary to implement this categorization was going to really increase the complexity of delivering this particular story. So in the iteration planning meeting, we were able to say to Jim, well, we can certainly play that story. We can implement it as you like with the categorization, but it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to be a lot more complex. On the other hand, if we simply just display all the nonprofits, that can get us some part of the way and get us maybe to a minimum viable product where users can actually select a nonprofit, maybe through a search interface or something like that, without the categorization feature. And then we can add the categorization feature later as we learn more about the integration and as we come up with other solutions for finding ways to categorize the product. The point here is that during IPM and throughout the development process, we as engineers and Josh as the designer can work with the business, work with the product team to come to an understanding of how we should implement these features, the order in which we should do them, so that we can deliver user value as fast as we can. So in an unbalanced team, the takeaway here is that in an unbalanced team, business decisions are made in isolation of the technical implementation details. And this can often lead to situations where building out some user features actually takes longer and is harder to do, and thus delivers user value more slowly than otherwise. Whereas in a balanced team, because business and engineering and design are working together, we can come to an understanding of how to deliver user value much more quickly.
So we're going to talk a little bit about I'm going to talk a little bit about pairing. So at Labs, we do a lot of pairing all the time between engineers, always paired up. But that also means that we're doing pairing across other disciplines as well. This story, for example, is an example of how Alex and I actually paired together on some of the designs that I had actually provided earlier in the project. This one revolves around a story around cropping photos. I provided some designs that were static mocks. Alex had some questions around those, around how we would be able to crop photos for different device sizes, different image sizes, and a number of things popped up based on those designs that I had provided. What Alex and I decided to do was sit down one afternoon the next day and actually walk through prototyping out this interaction in Xcode itself, rather than going back and forth on these static mockups and potentially raising more questions than necessary. So we sat down, took the afternoon, Alex and I dove into Xcode, and we actually prototyped out how some of these interactions would work and how some of these complexities could be brought down to some more simpler interactions. This was really helpful for a bunch of different reasons. It helped me understand some of the language around native iOS components. It helped me have a better conversation in further stories around how different pieces of the workflow would work in code. And it also helped Alex sort of see a full workflow, because we sort of did a usability test as we were going through the different pieces of this application. And from end to end, we got to walk through some of the other things that this interaction might raise questions about. And we were able to quickly prototype this interaction on the spot in code so that we were able to get this feedback a lot faster. On an unbalanced team, rules are typically siloed, and you stick to sort of your sole responsibility. On a balanced team, everyone is responsible for the success of the product, so we do what we need to in order to pair with each other, have conversations with each other in order to move the progress of the project forward and to have success. This could mean a lot of different things. It could mean, like I said, me pairing with Alex on a design sort of dev pair. It could mean myself and Jim sitting down and writing stories together based on some of the designs that I've provided, or any other number of pairing opportunities. But it doesn't just have to happen between engineers. It can happen across a lot of different disciplines. And one thing that sort of makes this work really well is that we all sit in a really close proximity to each other. I can just turn around and say, hey, Alex, I just provided this. I put this mock in this story. He may have some questions for me. And really quickly, I can turn around, talk to him about those, and set up a time to pair later that afternoon, or sit down right now and start to work on some of those interactions. But having the sort of tight-knit feedback loop of sitting down together as a team and being co-located is really helpful in sort of getting this balanced team, all these methods to sort of work really nicely with each other. So with that kind of rounds out our tales of a balanced team working on small token. It was a great project, and hopefully we were able to make some good connections in some of the balanced team methodologies.
We have a few minutes.
Yeah, we do. We have about 5 minutes for some questions, if anyone has any.
You mentioned how being co-located was a great feature of being balanced. Is it possible to be balanced without being co-located to have remote work?
Right. Yeah, so the question was, is it possible to have a good balanced team while not being co-located? And I think, yes, it is. I think we have members of our team that work remotely that makes it really easy with newer technologies to really almost feel like you're in the same room with that person. I have paired with Joe, who's sitting right here remotely, and it worked really well. And I think basically what it is having people be engaged like throughout the day together, rather than having maybe different schedules or people working different times during the day. At least having people on a relatively similar schedule makes it really easy for me to just jump on Slack or jump on jump on a Hangout, and I can do that same pairing and share screens and kind of get that same feeling as if I was sitting next to somebody. But it really helps when that team is all maybe not necessarily co-located, but like co-scheduled together and working in like a tight feedback loop in that way.
Along those lines, I just want to make a plug for Joe's talk. Joe is speaking today at 2:40, 2 o'clock. Oh, it's been moved. Okay, 2 o'clock. Do you know where?
This room.
Right here. So right here at 2 o'clock, Joe Moore is going to talk about his experience as someone who's pair programmed remotely forever. So it's an Ask Me Anything, right? Yeah, so you can come and ask Joe all about what that means and how that works as a remote pair. Sure. Other questions? Yes?
Any recommendations when you don't necessarily have access to the users? So I work on a corporate app that is used by corporate America. I don't always get the opportunity to talk to those users.
Sure. So the question, I'm going to hand this off to Jim to answer. The question was what to do when you don't necessarily have access to your users. So Jim's going to talk about that.
I guess the first thing I would recommend is really pushing for it, understanding that might be very difficult, but making the case for it and pushing as hard as you can to get access to the users can be really beneficial. We deal with this in many of our engagements, and after showing the value of speaking with users and what that produces for the team, we're able to convince our clients, even if they're reluctant to let us talk to B2B users, for instance, they often do. Now, if that's not possible, if you can find a way to talk to other types of users that might be good proxies for your actual users. So if it's an application that helps like accountants do their job, right? So if you can't talk to your actual accountants who are using it, perhaps you can find other accountants or other people who do that type of work that are willing to speak with you and try to take that information and put that into your app as best as you can. Understanding it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Anything else?
All right.
Great, thanks so much.